Hello and welcome to Headlines. Finally, after 2 long years of a stalemate, the protracted government formation process in Lebanon is over, with a compromise between the negotiating fractions being seemingly achieved. Indeed, last Saturday, the country's recently elected president, Joseph Aoun, signed a decree to form a new government, appointing Najaf Salam as new prime minister. The question is if this is finally final or some snag could derail the process. There is still one issue that some believe could be the cause for concern, leading to the collapse of the process. That is a wording of a ministerial statement, which on this occasion is expected to exclude any indirect reference to Hezbollah's military wing. Lebanon is in the throes of a crippling economic crisis and has been for some time, and the political stability is what this battered and somewhat embattled nation needs so badly now. I'm joined by Adnan Nasser, a news correspondent in Beirut, Lebanon. The Madam Najat Aoun Saliba, member of the Lebanese Parliament, joining from Beirut, Lebanon, and Mr. Nadim Shehadi, analyst, joining from Beit Mari, Lebanon. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much indeed for joining Headlines.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you for the invitation.
Madam Saliba, my first question is going to be to you. It looks like that Lebanon now has its first full-fledged government for the first time since 2022. Has the new government been completely formed, or could we still expect some last-minute snag? In one word, is this finally final for the time being?
Yes, it's finally final, and we are so happy the top administration is now in form, and we do look for the ministerial statement so that they can start in looking at the country. And like you said, we have been in for such a long time that the country needs all the efforts and the time we need to put everybody on track.
Thank you. Adnan, what's your reading of the situation there? I think the Prime Minister, he promised to restore confidence and he talked about reforms. What kind of reforms could be implemented in Lebanon, in particular when it comes to the political structure of the country?
Well, most of the reforms that he's referring to are building trust with the citizens. You have to remember one thing. Most of the Lebanese people, even today after the government has been formed, still don't feel that the government truly has their best interests. This is now the hardest part of what the government has to do, is building the trust between the citizen and the state. That starts with reforming the judiciary, allowing judges to be able to do their job without any political interference. This is also something that President Joseph Aoun has said in the past. He has defined himself, or has said in the past, that he would like to be the shield of the judiciary. So letting judges do their job without any interference, without any intimidation. This can also include specifically what happened with the port blast investigation. People want to see the results of this government. That includes transparency. Number one is, like I said earlier, is the reformation of trust between the state and the citizen. That will take time. I feel that this is going to be a much harder job than actually forming a government itself. But this is a good day for most Lebanese. This is a good time for the Lebanese people.
Mr. Shehadi, what is the most defining characteristic of this government? Do you think that it could be considered as being finally formed? And do you expect some last-minute snag derailing the process, or is it, or it is already final from your perspective as well?
Well, it is. I mean, the main characteristic of this government is that it comes from outside the political establishment. That's that. So not only the government, the president and the prime minister and most of the ministers are not technically politicians in Lebanon.
Sorry, Mr. Shehadi, internet is very bad there. I think that we were struggling to hear you properly. So I'm going to put this question to Madam Saliba. The Prime Minister, Najaf Salam, promised to follow up on the implementation of the 27th of November ceasefire agreement that ended the war between Israel and Hezbollah. He also said that the government should make its level best to ensure that Israeli forces as that very deal stipulates, should withdraw from the Lebanese territory. So does this also mean the Prime Minister is very confident that official Lebanese army would be able to assume control over the entire scope of southern Lebanon, forcing Hezbollah to move to the north of the Litani River?
That's a very, very important question. First of all, we stand behind the Lebanese armed force. They have shown over and over again that they are ready and they are capable of taking over the whole territory of Lebanon. And I think February 18 marks a very important date to Lebanon and to the whole international community that has been the guardian of the ceasefire agreement. We have heard from the US officials as well as French officials that they have guaranteed the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from Lebanese territory on February 18th. And one of the conditions or the challenges that they were asking for is the formation of the government. Here it is. We have a government, we have a full-fledged government, and hopefully it will be, we have the decree for the government as well, be up and running very, very soon. And that's why we want to hold international community accountable for their promises that Israel will withdraw from all the Lebanese territory, so the Lebanese armed force will gain the control over all our territories, and mainly also the Lebanese people would go back and regain their homes, their lands, and their villages. This has been a very, very important issue and matter. We all stand behind the Prime Minister and the President so that the ceasefire agreement and the UN Resolution 1701 are both implemented to the fullest. We also stand behind the two top officials to actually ask Hezbollah to turn in all their and not only south of the Litani River, also north of the Litani River, as it is stated by the UN Resolution 1701. So those are very important challenges. We don't consider them as obstacles, because this is like a determination from all the parties in Lebanon to see those conditions for the withdrawal of the Israeli forces and the or the turn-in of all the weaponries from all militias other than the public or the governmental armed forces in Lebanon.
Madam Saliba, I would like to clarify one point. Just before this interview, we were given to understand that there is going to be a post-government formation statement. I don't know what's the right terminology to employ. And that statement, I've been told, is very important. That makes reference to people, army, and resistance. And that resistance word should not be there because it's perceived to be indirect reference to Hezbollah. Is this something being discussed? Is this something cause for problem? I would be most grateful if Madam Saliba could reflect on this particular point, because we understand that when new president was elected by the parliament, he has always been perceived as somebody marking a break with former practices of the Beirut administration, which used to view Hezbollah militia as some sort of a mechanism against the Israeli actions on the ground. Are we going to see this concrete break from the former practices? And could you reflect on the sensitivity and sensibility involving that language about resistance?
Yes, this is a very, very important point. As Change MP who came after the 2019 revolution, we have called for the reinstating the government, reinstating the state, and we call always for one government, one Lebanese armed forces, and nothing else. However, historically, the Hezbollah and allies have convinced the top officials to include this part of resistance to validate the presence of armed forces other than the Lebanese armed forces inside the country, and that's why they insisted by force and by huge influence from Iran to include this name or this word resistance inside the ministerial statement. We want to put huge pressure on the Prime Minister and its cabinet so that this is not.
Mr. Shahadi, a new Prime Minister, Najaf Salam, formed this government in less than a month in a country, in Lebanon, where these endeavors take ages, really, and there's been a stalemate, been a stalemate for 2 years, and it looks like it's now over. Apart from the fact that now Hezbollah has been considerably weakened due to a number of reasons, of course, the fall of the government of Bashar al-Assad in Syria and also the result of the war with Israel, are there any other elements, any other important factors that have contributed to this result, which seems to be a success at this juncture?
No, these are the main factors. The main factor is the military defeat of Hezbollah, the fall of Assad, the failure of Hezbollah, not just the military defeat. It's okay to have a military defeat, but Hezbollah proved to be a complete political failure towards its own constituency, because basically it was revealed that Hezbollah was completely penetrated by agents from that gave information to the Israelis about every single position, every single arm, so it's a complete failure. So Hezbollah is taking a step back and allowed the formation of the cabinet, and the head of parliament is put in the forefront as the main negotiator. But this does not mean that Hezbollah is finished politically. It's very often that military defeats do not translate into political defeats as well. So we'll still have to see what kind of support they have and what's their power, even inside the parliament, to block any statement that does not please them in a way, or maybe they will tactically allow it to pass. I'm sure they are considering all the options, and so is everybody else.
Adnan, during our previous conversation with Mr. Shahadi, we talked about the Lebanese consensus, which should include the Shia community as many other communities. And Mr. Shahadi said that this community has been hijacked by Hezbollah. And new Prime Minister is talking about reforms. And I think I put this question earlier as well. But would these reforms involve some sort of inception of the restructuring of the political system, wherein this consensus will be achieved in a more effective way, disabling some of the militant or lesser militant groups to hijack communities? Could we expect the beginning of deep political reform in Lebanon, with the date of the 18th of February, the 8th of February marking that sort of historic milestone?
Well, if I understood your question, are you referring to the possibility of there being an alternative to Hezbollah from the Shia community?
Yes, that is part of that restructuring.
Yes, that will take some considerable time. We have parliamentary elections next year, so people will have a chance now to vote and put new names. We need to see new names from the Shia community rise above, who are critical of Hezbollah and its previous actions that have dragged the country into a war that otherwise it would not have been the case if Hezbollah disarmed itself many years ago. As we know and we admit that Hezbollah was the one who took the initiative to join the war on the side of its ally Hamas in Gaza. There was no consensus among the Shia community. They were just forced into it without any say whatsoever. So by 2026, we will see, I'm sure there will be some domestic opposition, if you will, from the Shia community towards Hezbollah. It's not really the job of the prime minister to tell people who they should or should not vote for, but definitely he would welcome, as I'm sure everyone here would welcome, more independent voices from the Shia community to speak up and pose a challenge to Hezbollah politically.
Yep. And Madam Saliba, my last question is going to be addressed to you, but really two questions in one question. About this Lebanese consensus. We understand Lebanon is a very complicated country. Mr. Shahadi reflected on that complexity, about the Ottoman legacy and so forth. Do you think the system that you have in your country needs to be somewhat reformed, making that consensus more practicable, avoiding those political problems that you have been experiencing over the past decades? And number two question, what to expect on the economic front? Because the throes of a crippling economic problem over the past years, what to expect on the economic front is the second part of my question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The establishment who actually were warlords in 1990 decided to take off their as warlords and then become the administrative rulers of the country. Those warlords did not follow the constitution. Instead, they created something called conspiracy. So they abandoned the constitution and abandoned the democratic regime or the system should abide by, and they created what they called a consensus democracy. This consensus democracy led to dividing all the resources of the country among them. This has led to the disaster living in now. There is no need to change the regime if we have never applied the regime. So we don't know if this regime is going to work or not, because those warlords decided to really not apply it at all because it doesn't fit their agenda, their benefit, or their political benefit. So that's why we are insisting as Change MPs, along with the new government, the new cabinet now that is formed, to really stop this consensus democracy and apply the constitution and the due diligence approach in all the appointments and all the constructive deals that they have to go by. And this is I have discussed with the Prime Minister and made sure that he is aware of all these consensus agreements they have made among each other. And I'm talking about the conventional parties who were once warlords during the Civil War. So we insist that the democratic process and the due diligence process, according to the Constitution, would be the leading drive or the leading roadmap that all the ministers that have been appointed would go with. And we have no doubt that the majority of the cabinet is basically independent ministers who really mean well and want to put the country back on track. Are we able to come out of this economic disaster that we have been living in 2019? We have also discussed this with Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, and we have him how the parliament that I have witnessed and saw how they national party, that means how they stopped any banking, they have stopped any total control, they have stopped to discuss how they need to return the money to depositors. So now I think they have no choice, the new government has no choice, they want to do reform, but to do bank auditing. And they have to comply with the IMF requirements. And at the same time, we want accountability for the money that have been stolen from the depositors. Without the reform and without the auditing, Lebanon cannot get back to do real economic reform. And this is something that I am sure in the agenda of the Prime Minister. So we will. They have to, or they have promised to do auditing, and they have to promise also to do the reforms necessary in order for Lebanon to go back on the list of the economic in the world.
Madam Saliba, thank you very much indeed for your answer. Most grateful to you. I'm very grateful to all of you, Mr. Shahade, Adnan, and Madam Saliba. Thank you very much indeed for your time. This was Adnan Nasser, A News Beirut correspondent, Najat Aoun Saliba, member of the Lebanese Parliament, and Nadim Shahade, analyst and economist. See you very soon indeed.